welcome back to the podcast. Or if this is your first time here, welcome here. We talk all about astrology, shadow work. We are shattering the shame about mental health awareness. We are here to share our stories and unapologetically become the superpower empaths that we all are. We just forgot. We forgot about how powerful we are. We've been dimming our light. We've been staying small and being quiet. And we can't do that anymore because the world needs us. The world is changing and we're all feeling the call. We're all walking each other home. So let's learn from each other. Let's share. Let's stop the shaming and the blaming, not only other people, but ourselves. So let's take responsibility for our shadows so that we can transmute it into our superpower. That's what it's all about. I've been sharing deep work within my shadow work journal. It's a workbook. It's a book. I share my stories and I also teach you how to do astrology. That's to come. But for now, we're going to dive into our body's response to our unconscious blocks. Okay, so if we continue to live in our triggers, in our stories that are no longer serving us, what happens to the body? Let's see what the book says. So I start this page with a beautiful quote by the amazing Wayne Dyer. Quote, "Be at ease, not dis-ease." Okay, so how does the body work? Here's what I've done the research on and written about in the book. And this is all in bullet point. You'll see that I do things, it's very pretty, it's very easy to digest because this is deep work. I don't want to put too much information on the page. You know, I don't want it to be like a textbook, but honestly, this is the research that I've done. I've been doing this for years. I've been a counselor and a personal holistic one-on-one coach. I was a social worker. I went to school. I did all the things. And this has been my life's mission for a long time now. And now I'm ready to serve on this podcast and share all the information with you. So I wrote this book and we're going through it. This is how the body works in response to those triggers and traumas when you live in those cycles that are negative and no longer serving you. So energy goes toward strong emotions, okay? That's where our energy goes as energy bodies. So if you repeat the same reactions to the same strong emotions, your body goes into autopilot. So the body is like, oh yeah, this thing again. Okay, this stress release again. Oh, okay, this feeling again. The body goes into autopilot, just like it. You don't even need to think about it. It just goes into the autopilot mode. Then the body gives a stress response, which is living in survival. It's that survival mode you hear all the experts talking about. Survival mode. So we have it in our systems. So if the tiger is chasing you, you should react, but you shouldn't live in that stress release. And that's what living in survival mode is like. It's like constantly being chased by a tiger. That's how often us empaths can be. We can get stuck in that cycle of living in thinking we're being chased by the tiger. And that's what the mind is thinking. So the body reacts to that. Okay. So again, this switches on our fight or flight, which knocks the body out of its regular homeostasis, stasis, and balance. It puts you out of balance when you live in fight or flight. Okay. The body is not meant to live in emergency mode. This is how dis-ease turns into disease. Dis-ease turns into disease. It's key to learn how to regulate your emotions in order to keep your body healthy. And so something I've highlighted down here is that stress hormones are addictive. You can get addicted to your stressful thoughts. So let's just talk about addiction for a hot minute. Let's just talk about any addiction. I don't care if it's booze or drugs or food or whatever whatever an addiction is. If you try and quit, so you're a smoker. If you try and quit, you're going to get cravings, right? If you try and quit drinking, you're going to get cravings to drink, right? So it's the same. You are addicted to the negative loops. You're addicted to that unconscious loop of being offended, being upset, being angry. You're addicted to it because your body goes into autopilot. Your body goes into fight or flight response. You're addicted to that emotion every time the same thing happens. So your body's going to get cravings to just go back and just be that overreactor and just be that person that's constantly offended anytime someone gives you feedback. Just be that person that is like immediately embarrassed when somebody brings up something that maybe you have hurt them doing, or you hurt them when you said that thing. Okay, so that's your body going into autopilot. That's your body going into fight or flight, and it's not serving you anymore. To be honest with you, it's not serving, and it's making your body sick. So that's what we point out. We've talked about in the last podcast episode about how the mind works. Now we're talking about how the body reacts to how the mind works, okay? And then in this page, we go through some examples like your thoughts, your actions, and your feelings, what continues. And I've written here, if we continue the cycle of negative thoughts, these thoughts become our beliefs, and we accept this as who we are. And this is just who we become. Next thing you know, you're 50 years old. You have been reacting the same way since high school. And it might be time to have another way, to think another way, to rewire the brain. It can be very difficult. It can be very difficult. I'm here to say so. I'm here to say that I have had to take an honest look at my triggers and my shadows. So you're not alone, especially if you're a highly sensitive person and an empath. And I'm sure that you are. If you're listening to this podcast, you wouldn't even be interested in this topic if you are not a highly sensitive person or an empath who's stuck in this negativity, in negative cycles, and you're ready to stop. Okay. So many, and most people live here in the same, the familiar, the known, the routine, the predictable, and in the past. Most people live there, okay? But if you're going to embrace a new reality, you must live here. Unfamiliar, unknown, different, unpredictable, the future. So again, most people are stuck in the past. Most people, it's very predictable how they're going to act. Okay. But if you want to change, if you are sick and tired of the painful cycles, you've got to go towards something that's unfamiliar. And so many people are not willing to change. This is where it stops. So everything I've been talking about in these first few podcast episodes, people are like, yeah, I'm with you. I hear you. Yeah, that makes sense. But then when it comes to the point where I'm talking about you, have to make a change, that's when people quit. That's when people say, okay, this shadow work, no, it's woo-woo, it's silly, it's not going to work for me. When people realize that you have to make a change, that's when people quit. Okay. And so you need to break your routine. You need to break your pattern. But the good news is you can rewire your brain. It's possible. Science teaches us how to do it. I've done the research. I've done the work myself. I share it all in the book. Okay. So you can create new thoughts, and you can create new behaviors, which will therefore create new feelings, and you will have a healthier body. Who doesn't want this? Okay. So let's go. Let's rewire. And so you'll see the book is very pretty, very digestible. And here's one of my favorite quotes in the book. And it says, and it's by Dr. Joe Dispenza. Again, he's probably the world expert on this. So to quote Dr. Joe, quote, lose your mind so you can get a new one, end quote. How much do you love that? Okay, so I hope that this has given you some inspiration. I hope this isn't the time that you now quit. I hope that you're not going to be listening to the future episodes, because this is where the rubber hits the road. Okay, this is where most people quit, and don't let that be you. Okay, this is time for you to say, I'm ready to take my power back. I'm telling you, if you are listening to this, if this is resonating with you, I can almost guarantee that you are an empath. You are a highly sensitive person. And so you've been absorbing all sorts of junk, okay, your whole life. And you've been programmed, whether it's your religion, it's your parents, it's your friend groups, it's school. You've been programmed, okay? If you've been living on planet Earth, you've been programmed. There is no shame in admitting that you have been programmed, because I've been programmed. Everybody's been programmed. Are you ready to take a look at the programs and to take an honest look? Is this serving me? Is this causing me pain? Is my mind thinking about this all day and I'm living in these patterns again and again and again, and it keeps showing up in different relationships, in different circumstances, no matter I'm middle-aged, and it continues to happen. It was happening in high school. It's happening 30 years later. It's time to get honest. Stop the shaming, not only of other people. We're not going to be doing any blaming. You'll see that's one of my greatest brain hacks in here. If you're willing to continue along with these episodes, one of my greatest hacks is the no fault process. So I can't wait to share that with you. Nobody is at fault, okay? Not the person that you have been yapping about, gossiping about, not the person that you think is the reason why you're in pain, okay? They are only holding up a mirror for you so you can finally look at the shadow, so you can finally take charge of the trigger so that you can transmute it. I know that's very difficult for a lot of people to hear. And this is also when a lot of people quit, is when you start saying there are no victims. These people that you could tell the story, you could tell an elaborate story of how wrong they were and how much they hurt you. And you probably are 100% right. But do you want to be right, or do you want to walk through this and take ownership and power again? We've got to get out of these stories that we're telling. That's the whole point of doing the shadow work. Again, this is when most people quit, when they realize, A, they have to change, and B, that you aren't a victim. And so victim stories are no longer going to work. If you're willing to do the shadow work, you've got to get out of the victim story of, she said this, and even though I did that, and you've got to get out of that, because that's what's keeping you in the negative loop, okay? So again, I've said it a million times, I'll say it again, this is when most people quit. Don't let that person be you. I'm going to teach you the best brain hacks, how to rewire. And yes, you can rewire. And Dr. Joe Dispenza is the leader in this. And there are so many quotes that you can Google after you stop listening to this podcast about how you can rewire, how you can change your thought patterns, and it will completely change your life. Dr. Joe, you just have to ask for ChatGPT or Dr. Google to give you the quotes on that. And it is possible. I've got the research done. I've done the research, I've done the work. And so I'm going to share brain hacks in the next episode. And yes, I will be sharing my astrology hacks on how to do shadow work to dive even deeper. So because we have been living here, we are programmed to live here. If we were born on planet Earth, we've been programmed to live here in the mind, and we're all being called now to drop into our hearts. That's why we do shadow work, so that we can use our hearts. We can speak from the language of the heart, and we can stop using our words as weapons. We can stop overthinking things that are no longer serving us. We've got to drop into our hearts, because when we live from our heart, when we have a heart-led life, we are no longer run by programs that are no longer serving us. We are no longer blaming and shaming anyone, especially and including ourselves. So that's what I'm here to teach and to serve in these podcast episodes. That's what this book's all about. Taking responsibility, learning how to drop into our hearts. I can't wait to share all the things. Thank you so much for following along these episodes. Share your feedback, comments, questions. Where do you want me to go with this? But I am going to be going through this book. There's so much in this book. We get into the astrology and masculine and feminine energy. The masculine is our thoughts. The feminine energy is our heart. How do we drop in here? How do we get more feminine? We're so programmed to be so masculine. I'm going to share all the things. So I'm so excited to be here, to be serving you on these podcasts. So please share your feedback and your questions, and do join for the next episode where we're going to be talking about brain hacks to stop the unconscious programs that are repeating in loops that are no longer serving us. I hope you'll come back for that one. Bye.